And we are live streaming. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show. If you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward 10 minutes if you'd like to go ahead and get things started, or you can hang out with us right here for the next 10 minutes as I figure out what I'm doing with my life. Only have 10 minutes for that. Doesn't seem like enough, does it? Let's find a presentation on Keynote. It's one thing I haven't done yet. I changed the website. Chat room is up. Hello, chat room. I have a thing in my throat. I gotta clear my throat. That's working. Let's do a camera check. That'll be something we can do. Hi, how you doing? I seem a little low. Don't I seem a little low? Let's see if this will go up. I think I just made it go down. That's great. Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Let's embarrass myself a little more. There we go. Okay, is that better? That's not different at all. Oh, why is that different today? Is it lower? It is lower. My legs are lower than they should be. So what happens now? What happens if it won't go up? What do we do for the next 2 hours? Do we try to figure out something else? That's just gonna how it's gonna be, people. That is how it's gonna be. That's not so bad. That's not awful. I've seen worse. Why is that different? Look at it jump around. Jump around. Yeah, that's not what we want. How can I fix that? Let's try a few things here. We're going to come over here with the mouse, and we're going to, let's see, what number is that? That is V1. That is V1 on your radio dial. V1, which is now ME1, but it's a little bit different than it should be. Let's change that completely. Oh, where do I keep those configuration changes? They would be in the virtual input settings. I think we can do that. I think we can make some changes here really quick, before we start a live stream. That's all. I wonder why it changed. It's odd that it would be different. That's a little bit weird. That would be set up that way. But let's see if I've got a positioner. That's V1, right? Got it. There it is. That would be, is that the A or the B? On V1, that is A. Let's change it. Positioning on V1. Nope, that's DDR1. I want to change because that one's 1. This one needs to be, Y needs to be 0, X needs to be 0, and I think that was it. Now we're going to see if it's really it. These are the things that I do, people, is I want to make sure that when I bring in the graphic that nothing changes with the video, and it doesn't. Okay. All that just so I stop twitching. And there we go. Leads right into the question in the chat room, which is thought about streaming on Twitch. Nope. Really haven't. What would I stream on Twitch? Twitch is a gaming network. If you wanted to see me game, you would feel better about yourself. That would be true, because I get like an hour or two, maybe in a day that I can do that. Did not yesterday. I might have an hour tonight, which means I am just bad enough. I don't know. I'm decent on certain games. Don't get me wrong, but Twitch, something for Twitch? No, Nobody wants that. Nobody. One of these days, I'm going to do it just to see how stupid it is for me. You know, a couple beers in and you're thinking, oh, I'll stream live on Twitch. I do have a Twitch name. You're welcome to follow if it ever happens someday. Let's see if I can find... No, that's Frog Pants. Where's twitch.tv? Thank you, Auto Thing, with the stuff. Twitch. And am I logged in? I think it's just Professor Messer. You can't even see on the screen. It's too... There we go. Log in. Log in. Let's turn off the noises. And what's the username? It is, yes, Professor Messer, all one word. You can follow me on Twitch. And that way, if I ever go online live with a stream, you'll be able to see it. Which will never happen. So I won't say never. It would be mighty unusual for that to happen. For something like this, obviously Twitch doesn't apply. Twitch doesn't really want people on that are doing non-gaming things. I know they do have some podcast areas you can put things in, and non-gaming, but that's not really the platform for me. I need one that's a little bit different. I'm pretty sure on the streaming system that I'm using that I would be able to stream with that. Pretty sure I could figure it out. It's effectively, if it does YouTube, if I can do YouTube with this, I can pretty much do anything. I think it's just doing, it's not doing RTMP, but it's doing something similar. Something like that on the pieces. We have about 3 minutes if you're hanging out in the chat room. Let me make sure everybody's here. Be nice if I was checking. Like, was it anybody even watching? I would do an hour and then realize, nobody's really here. I guess I would really recognize nobody was here right after the first question, right? Nobody's answering. Nobody knows the answer. I've made the questions too hard. See, I think it was me. But no, I'm just unpopular. That's the difference. And I realized nobody was here, or I didn't start the stream, or it's kind of hard to mess this one up, though. YouTube makes it very easy to stream. I think we're in pretty good shape here. I already did the podcast pre-roll before you were here. Alpha checking in. Wow, that's old school. I might have kinfolk in that area. Indeed. From back in the day. Because my mom is from Mariana and my dad is from Blentstown. I'm about as in the woods, Florida as you can get. And there's Canada checking in. See, Mrs. Professor Messer is 100% Canadian blood, but an American citizen, and has never been a Canadian citizen. So there's a little connection. There's a Canada connection there. With Mrs. Professor Messer. I need to take her up there. We've never been to Canada. We need to go up there. And PA, you're a little white and snowy right now. And Dubai is here. Wow, a lot of people checking in internationally. Let's see. We have to find out now the time in Dubai. It's 9 o'clock at night. That's not so bad. 9 o'clock. It's time to start. Well, we got a minute. Raleigh, New Orleans, Brazil, Salt Lake, London, in Florida, but Jamaican. Me too, as it turns out. And there's South Florida. Miss you guys. Used to live there. Used to live in. Let's see. When I left, I was in Miramar. I had lived in Miami Lakes and Hialeah and Pembroke Pines and Miramar. Before finally leaving. I had 4 places I lived while I was down there. I was only down there 10 years. West Virginia or Orange County. Very nice. Oh, it's kind of nice out here. It's like 70 degrees. The last study group I did was freezing, and now it's 70. Welcome to Florida. And speaking of doing a study group, it's time to do a study group. Are we recording? We're recording here. Oh, Scotland. I need to get back to Scotland. We're recording YouTube. We're recording locally here. Okay, we can do this thing now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2018 Network Plus Study Group from ProfessorMesser.com. I'm your host, James Messer. We'll be with you during this first hour of live interactive QA, and then we'll open up the phone lines for the second hour for as long as my voice will handle it. So that will be something useful to do. I'll be showing you just in a moment how we get to the point where we're doing the live Q&A, because you get to participate with this. You get to type things in, and I automatically see them magically using the power of the internet, get to see what your answers were associated with this. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a bit. If you are watching this on YouTube, you may even want to flip over to ProfessorMesser.com/live, because there's a live event chat where I've been speaking to folks from Canada and California and Scotland and Dubai and all points in between. So it's kind of nice to have that there. There is plenty that we are going to go through today. I've got many questions for you that I can't quite remember because I wrote them about a week ago. So this will be new for all of us, I guess, if you look at it that way. Don't forget to follow what we're doing. ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. Your subscriptions there are incredibly important. Thank you so much for doing that. There is also vouchers available. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. If you are a student with an EDU address, you should probably not use this. You should probably go to the academic store. So type in CompTIA Academic Store into the Google machine. That's where you need to buy your vouchers because they're heavily discounted. But if you are not a student, you do not have a .edu email, so take a little bit off from the voucher discount I have on my site at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. So there's something useful to have there too. We are able to do this study group thanks to your ongoing support, your support of my course notes, and your support of my videos. Of course, every one of my Network Plus videos, my entire training course, every minute of every video is available for you to watch absolutely free. There's nothing you have to pay. There's nothing you have to register for. You can just watch them. So, but the idea is that if you're watching these, you think, I may want to take this offline, may want to take it when I'm not connected to the internet. I have a version you can purchase that is an offline version that includes video, audio MP3s, and my course notes PDF, all available at ProfessorMesser.com/GetNetPlus. I've also got some pop quizzes available for Network Plus out on the website, absolutely free as well, ProfessorMesser.com/popquiz. It's an archive of some of our older Network Plus study groups, and there are questions in there that do apply to the latest Network Plus exam. That might be useful for you. If you're someone who likes to take this with you in an audio form, you're not really into watching the video replay, I have a podcast version of this available, really for all of my study groups. You can find it at ProfessorMesser.com/podcasts. And that will automatically, first you can play it from there, but then you can subscribe from that page using your favorite podcast catching, grabbing program so that the podcast just automatically appear on your mobile device. Makes it very easy to be able to do that. Let's talk about answering questions today, because I'm going to ask you questions and then you have to answer them. People in the chat room are already asking, where do I find this? Where is this? Well, you can find instructions and details on ProfessorMesser.com/live, or you can just pop open a new browser window right now and go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. I don't even think I have it on this page yet. Or if you are on your app, there's a Socrative student app. That's the service that we use, Socrative. There's a Socrative student app that will ask you for a room name. It's not really a password, more of a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. And that will get you to the right place. There's a question waiting for you when you get there. We'll talk more about that question in just a bit. We'll see if it really works. We're going to talk about Network Plus today. The Network Plus exam, the one that's currently available if you wanted to sign up right now and take a Network Plus exam, you would be taking the exam version N10006. This was the one that was released in February 28th, 2015. If you count, that's 3 years ago. And as some of you may know, CompTIA likes to renew or update their exam every 3 years. Now, if you have a Network Plus certification, this doesn't affect you at all. This is only the version of the questions that they like to ask you so that they will give you a Network Plus certification. So if you're a Network Plus certified person, really doesn't matter what version the exam is. They change the exam every week. Doesn't matter for you. You're already certified. But some of you are working on your exams. And one of the things you may have seen is that the N10007 exam objectives have been released already by CompTIA. You can download them on the CompTIA site, but you can't take the exam yet. They've pre-released the exam objectives. Also, a bit more challenging for you is that they haven't actually said when the new exam is coming. They haven't officially announced anything, but we expect it's going to be in about 3 years after the last one. So somewhere the beginning of March timeframe, I think we'll probably see an announcement about that. They haven't really said anything, but that's the word on the street. That's the rumor we hear, and that's probably a pretty good rumor. That's probably pretty accurate. There is, however, the question that I get now, which is, well, should I wait for the new version to come out? Should I not take the current version? And the answer is really no, not at all. In fact, now that I have already started work on the new Network Plus exam course, the difference between the N10006 and the N10007 are remarkably minor. There are not huge changes. And that's usually what we see when the Network Plus exam has been updated. Networking technologies don't tend to have these dramatic leaps that you might see in something like the PC architecture. You know, when the last A Plus was out, you know, the last A Plus has on it Windows Vista, Windows 7, and Windows 8.1, and they didn't even put Windows 10 on there, even though Windows 10 had been out about a year. So it's one of those things where for Network Plus, you don't tend to see the enormous jumps that you see in something like A Plus or Security Plus. The latest Security Plus was half of it was brand new, 50% change. I've already gone through and looked at the differences between these, and we can look at that in the after show if you'd like. There is such a minor difference, 10, 15% difference. It's almost the same exam in a different format, scrambled up into different, it's organized differently. So I don't ever recommend waiting for a new exam. Never, never, never wait. There's too much value in having the certification. So if you're already studying for the N10006, keep studying. It is most likely that CompTIA will not have this particular certification retire for 6 months after the N10007 was released. So if they release it in March, you have 6 months after that. So we're talking the September-October timeframe when you would ever see the N10006 go away. That's plenty of time to study. That's plenty of time to take your exam. And whether you take the N10006 and pass or you take the N10007 and pass, it's exactly the same certification. You don't get anything new. They don't give you a gold star for taking the latest version of the exam. It's the same. It's exactly the same exam with exactly the same time frame, with exactly the same number of questions, with exactly the same format. It's practically the same exam with a new question pool. And that question pool didn't change very much at all. So it's good. If you're studying for an N10006, you're studying the latest stuff. That's one of the nice things about networking is you have the latest things that you're studying. You know the latest technologies. They don't tend to jump dramatically. Let's do some questions about Network Plus today. I've got a sample question up there so that you can go through and see if your Socrative is working. In fact, on my side, the question is, what protocol and port is commonly used to transfer files without authentication? And you can see there's a link there to professormesser.com/QA, which takes you right there for those pieces. So that's one that will give you an answer. And I've got some answers. In fact, I should probably look at these answers before you look at the answers. So a number of folks have said, how about FTP? FTP is it. And I'm asking, of course, what protocol and port. So we're seeing names of different applications. I don't see any. Some of them, I guess you could say a protocol. Most people saying FTP. Some folks said TFTP, the Trivial File Transfer Protocol, port 69. Which port 69? Which protocol? port 69. Some of you are really doing pretty well there. Which one in seeing those? I wonder which one it might be. It's definitely port 69, but which one is it? Some of you put the TCP 21. Nope. Nope, nope. 22 UDP, is that it? So a number of you have answered on here with different things. Which one is UDP? Use TC UDP 69 or TCP 69. What is it? A lot of you said FTP in that one. So TCP port 20 and TCP port 21, it uses both of those port numbers to do a simple file transfer. How complicated? And yet that's the way it works. But a FTP requires some type of authentication, even if it's a anonymous user, which is literally the word anonymous and then whatever password you want to put in. The anonymous user, that's still authentication. The one that does not require authentication, as many of you have said, is TFTP. And TFTP is UDP port 69. That is the one that you will always see implemented. It's very, very simple. It doesn't require any type of authentication. It was built to get this file to that machine with as little overhead as possible. There's no logging in. There's no file manipulation. There's no changing of file names. There's no deleting of files. You simply copy a file from here and you write it over there. That's it. That's why they call it the trivial file transfer protocol, because that's all it does, is the trivial part. And as you could imagine, if you have TCP, that's more overhead. So UDP has no overhead associated with it. But of course, now all of your checking of that file will have to be done by the application, because there's nothing at the transport level providing any type of retransmissions associated with that. So that's one of those that you might run into on your exam. So if you did answer UDP 69, and some of you did put into the list UDP 69, somebody did it right there. UDP 69, I think some of you just added that, didn't you? Some of the ones at the top are the newest. So if we scroll down, some of you did pretty good. TFTP 69, I'll take that. I don't deal with partial credit. It's full credit or nothing. TFTP port 69, just remember UDP. UDP might come up on the exam. So make sure you think about that as you're working through all of those details. Let's do a Q&A though. Now on the exam, one of the things, people are already asking this in the chat room, on the exam, very first set of questions you get will not be multiple choice questions. CompTIA has this concept of multiple choice questions and then what they call performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are any other type of question than multiple choice. It could be a fill in the blank. It could be a matching. It could be that they pop you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a particular function. They may give you the screens to configure a wireless access point and say, go configure it. They might give you a firewall front end and tell you to set up a particular rule to perform a particular function. It's anything that's not multiple choice. So these will be the first set of questions you get on your exam. And this throws some people, especially if you're in the exam, there's a lot of anxiety. Suddenly you get these very involved questions. You're just not ready for them. Your brain's not even working yet. The adrenaline is going. What I normally do is skip over. And I recommend that people skip over those questions, because in CompTIA's exam, you can move to any question you want at any time. It's not an exam that forces you down a particular path. So that gives you an advantage. You could jump over those performance-based questions, do all the multiple choice, settle into the exam. The multiple choice also helps you remember different things. It jogs your memory of the topics. And then when you're done with those, you can circle back to the front and go through the performance-based questions. Now, we're not going to do that here. I'm going to hit you first thing with a performance-based question, and I'm going to see how you do. So I have a performance-based question for you first thing. I'm going to click the next button so you see it on your Socrative, and here is what you see on Socrative. So the question is, specify the OSI layer for each of these items. Now remember, do not put this in the chat room. You want to do this on Socrative or professormesser.com/QA, which will take you over to Socrative. So that becomes useful to have that there. Here are the 5 items. 1 is router, 2 is web server, 3 is category 5E patch cable, 4 is switch, and 5 is a TCP packet filter. On the exam, you may get a maximum of 90 questions. You'll probably get fewer than that, but They could ask you 90 total questions on the exam. And when you're hit with these performance-based questions, you can see it's more than just answering A, B, C, or D. You're going to have to go through a process for doing all of these. So you can, of course, put this on your Socrative. Make sure you put in, it could be, if you think they're all layer 1, you could do number 1 is 1, number 2 is 1, number 3 is 1, number 4 is 1, number 5 is layer 1. You could do that and put them all there. On the exam, those questions, you do have to think about this. Somebody in the chat room mentioned if you skip over the performance-based questions and you go all the way through the multiple choice, make sure you have time to go back and do all of the ones that you skipped. You don't want to run out of time. Time management is extremely important on these exams. These questions only have one possible layer. So people in the chat room, what about these that have multiple layers? Nope, everything on here is associated with a single layer of the OSI model. You do not have any on this particular list that you would qualify as being a different layer. They're all in there to do this, and that's an important thing to consider whenever you start working through what are these things. And people are now they're making up their own questions in the chat room of what their answer. I asked you very specifically, router, web server, category 5e patch cable switch, and TCP packet filter. There you go. You have to be able to do that and know those different things. Hopefully, OSI model is something that you've got ready to go. You've been working with it. It makes sense for you. You can pop right through these different items for the OSI layer. In fact, I'm going to sneak a peek and see how you folks are doing with these. I think some of you are doing pretty good with them. Looking here, and indeed, some of these are spot on with finding the different things to do. Some of you have been working with the OSI model. This is a little bit of a challenge. If you haven't used the OSI model, how do you take this very odd segmentation of technology and apply it to the real world? But we do this all the time in the networking industry. When we're talking to other people, we're describing things at layer 3. We're describing things at layer 7. We're saying we got a problem at layer 4. We're saying we have a layer 1 issue. We do this all the time because it's a common way to understand how things are communicating, even if the two things communicating are very different kinds of devices. So it does come in extremely handy. I have people send me email often saying, we don't use the OSI model. We use it all the time. We use it all the time in the industry, and you will too. Let's see how we did with the answers to this one. We have a number of you that have answered already. So let's see how we did. Let's step through each one of these layers and see what we think this OSI model is. So the first question was router. Which OSI layer is associated with the router? Well, that would be the OSI layer 3 or the network layer. Anything dealing with an IP address or making decisions based on IP address. IP addresses are layer 3. Routers make decisions based on the IP address. Routers are layer 3. When we talk about adding a layer 3 device to the network, we're talking about adding a router. So that's what we mean when we say router is a layer 3 device. Layer number 2 is a web server device or a web server. Could be software, may not even be a device. So a web server is something that operates at really the highest layer of the OSI model. That's a layer 7 device. That's your application. That's what's giving you that service that you're sending information across the network on. A web server is a very good example of an application. This might be any type of application you're using. If you're using Google Mail, that's an application at the application layer. So if you're in Facebook, Facebook's your application. That's a layer 7 technology. Question number 3 is a category 5e patch cable. Well, category 5e patch cable might be a pretty good one. Let's see this one associated with that. Layer 1 is physical, and that indeed fits very well with a patch cable. The cable itself, technically speaking, I know we refer to cables as layer 1, but we're really talking about the signal inside the cable. That is the layer 1 piece of this. Obviously, if the cable is not working, then the signal is not working, and that's where a layer 1 problem is. So very often we combine together the idea of the physical cable or fiber and the signal going over it. We just put all of that into layer 1, the physical layer for those. We have switch, a switch, which, by the way, folks in the chat room are going, what about a layer 3 switch? There's no such thing. That's just a marketing term. A switch and a router are two very different things. There are switches that have routing capabilities built into them, but the switch is still switching and the router is still routing, and they're two completely independent things that are happening inside of that device. So the switch, the part that's doing the switching, which is what this question is doing it all at layer 2. It makes its decisions on where to forward traffic based on a MAC address. MAC address is that data link layer address, that layer 2 address. So anytime you see switch, it's layer 2. Anytime you see router, it's layer 3. Anytime somebody says layer 3 switch, a layer 2 router, which one is it? Now, it's a marketing term that just talks about putting a switch and a router in the same piece of hardware. The switching part is still working at layer 2, and the routing part is still working at layer 3, and that's the difference between those two. And the last one, number 5, is the TCP packet filter. Kind of gave away a little bit of it, but there's many different ways to filter a packet, and I wanted to specify exactly what we would be filtering on. And since we're filtering on TCP or UDP, we know that those are layer 4 protocols. So if you are talking about the transport layer of the OSI model, then you're talking about layer 4, then you're talking about TCP or UDP. And that would be layer 4. So to review, your router is layer 3. Your web server's layer 7, your category 5 ePatch cable's layer 1, your switch is a layer 2, and your TCP packet filter's layer 4. And if somebody gives you a question that says, what is a layer 3 switch fit into the OSI model? It doesn't. You have the switching part of that device that's working at layer 2 and the routing part of that device that's working at layer 3. Two different things. So that's one where it does become important for you to understand what's happening when in these technologies. So make sure you know OSI. And OSI's, that's definitely a part of your exam objectives. Make sure you know your OSI model. Make sure you know it cold. If you didn't know any of these, some of you in the chat room saying, I didn't know, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's great. You've now just learned 5 different devices and the OSI layers that they're associated with. So that might be helping you. And get all of those. They're in the objectives. You should absolutely know it. In fact, on the N10006, it's section 5.1, Understanding the OSI Model. Put it right there at the bottom. That is the video where all this information is associated with. You might want to make a note. Go watch the video. It's all in there. Can help you through those different pieces. I'm going to skip over the conversation here about the OSI model, but let's do another question. I've got more questions to go through. We're going to skip really quick. The question I have, since we started talking about file transfers, let's do another file transfer question. This one's a little bit different, though. The question is, you need to transfer a file between sites, but you want to be sure the data remains confidential. Which of these would be the best protocol to use? So this is a multiple choice question, and I have some possible answers for you for the question that you need to transfer a file between sites, but you want to be sure the data remains confidential. Which of these would be the best protocol to use? Would it be A, SNMP v2, B, FTP, C, Telnet, D, IPsec, E, HTTP? One of those would be the best protocol to use. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and put your answer in and decide what it is. Is this a gimme? Is it not a gimme? Is it a little different? It's maybe a little more hard. We have to think about it. It's a scenario. Very common to get this on the exam these days. CompTIA tends to write a lot in the question now. It tends to be their latest style for their question pool, is to write a lot of information in the question. Bob and Sally need to transfer a file between sites. Bob just came back from lunch. Sally's thinking about her vacation time. They want to be sure the data remains confidential, and they're not sure how to do that using the equipment that they currently have available at their remote sites located in Walla Walla, Washington. Which of these would be the best protocol to use? So that's when you run into that, you start thinking, what do I read in here? You kind of have to sift through the question and find the things that are the most important parts of this so that you can break it down into its most basic parts. My questions aren't quite as involved as what's going on with everything else that's there. So that's one wherever I start getting into trying to write questions that are like CompTIA, I don't want to do that either, because you do run into these scenarios where I'll write a bunch of questions that sound like an exam, and then they'll just change the way they do the exam. I tend to focus more on here's what you should focus on. Here's what you should know about the exam. And I kind of go from there. I think that's a good way to do this and work those. People in the chat room have mentioned, why is it Bob and Alice used in networking? We do it often in cryptography. We talk about really Alice and Bob because it's A and B. Instead of saying user A and user B, we say Alice and Bob. That's why. It's kind of an odd little thing. Let's talk about what we answered on this one. How did we do with those? Here we are. So we got a majority, so that's good. 77% said IPsec. 16% said FTP. Might be either one of those. So we've also got 4% said SNMP version 2, 3% said Telnet, and 0% said nothing. HTTP, 0%. Nobody interested in that one. So the real question is, if we are going to transfer this and it is going to be secure, what are we going to use to make this happen? Secure protocols become a little bit of a challenge to figure out how we're going to use these. That is probably the most important part of this. Is you start working on a network and you start capturing packets and you realize everything going across the network anybody could grab. And there are many different ways to grab data going across the network. And it's very, very easy to make that happen. So there are some protocols that you can use to make sure the traffic going back and forth are very secure. One of those might be SSH if you're doing terminal sessions. Instead of using Telnet, use SSH. If you're doing file transfers, you could use SFTP, which is a file transfer protocol built on top of SSH, which comes in handy. SNMP version 3 is the encrypted version of SNMP. Transport layer security, TLS, what we used to call SSL, what we really kind of still do, SSL, is we still call it SSL, even though it's called TLS, is what we use to encrypt HTTPS communication. So for instance, if you're going to the Professor Messer website, all of the Professor Messer websites now communicates over HTTPS. There's no HTTP there that you would be able to get to. So that's a good example of being able to transfer using web servers and having encrypted. And then there is probably one of the most popular ways to set up encrypted tunnels between sites and between devices, which is IPsec. Stands for Internet Protocol Security. We never call it that. We call it IPsec. And we're really encrypting everything going back and forth over a particular set of IP addresses, which comes in handy. So let's look at the answers that we had. As we've just seen, there are a lot of different ways to transfer data over a confidential channel, over an encrypted link, maybe using an encrypted protocol. But which one, based on the options we had, really fits into that scenario? 0% said HTTP. Well, obviously, HTTP, that protocol itself, has no encryption associated with it. So, of course, HTTP is not going to be a good one. If I had said HTTPS, you would have had an option there because that protocol is encrypted data between web servers and clients. Telnet, 3% of you said Telnet. As we've already seen, Telnet, wide open, non-encrypted. Never use Telnet. Do not use Telnet. Please don't use Telnet. You should always use SSH for any type of terminal communication. Never use Telnet for anything. 4% said SNMP version 2. And as we also saw, SNMP version 3 was the first version to provide some type of encryption. So SNMP version 2 would still be in the clear. The information's being transferred, and you really wouldn't use that to transfer a file between sites either. That's a completely different thing that SNMP is used for. FTP, 16% said FTP, but FTP is a wide open, non-encrypted protocol as well. That would not be one we would want to use. It does solve the problem of transferring a file between sites, but it does not solve the problem of wanting to be sure the data remains confidential. If you wanted to use FTP to transfer that data, you would have to encrypt it using some other means, maybe use PGP to encrypt it, send the PGP data via FTP. But even then, you're seeing different things in the FTP channel. You're seeing your username and passwords in the clear. There's still things in the FTP communication that are not encrypted. So it's just a bad idea. Don't use FTP either. Don't use Telnet. Don't use FTP. Those two, if you stick with those two rules, you're going to do all right. Never use Telnet, never use FTP. So it's pretty useful to have that there. The one only answer here that was available to you, and this is how it will be on your exam as well, is IPsec. Now, there are other ways that you could transfer a file between sites. What about SFTP? We could have just used SFTP and transferred the file. And that wasn't one of your options. The question was, which of these would be the best protocol to use? And you will very often get this on your exam where the first thing that you would use is not one of the options available. But that wasn't the question. The question wasn't, what is the first thing you would use? The question was, we have a choice between these. Which one fits that category? And that frustrates people. I know, because they send me an email saying, I'm frustrated with these questions because what I would do isn't one of the options. Well, what you would do probably isn't always going to be the option wherever you happen to be working either. The thing that makes the most sense for you doesn't necessarily fit into the design or architecture or firewalls or the things that you're currently running in your organization. So you have to think about that too. And you're only given a certain number of options on the exam. Every question is its own little world. You have to only interpret the information they're providing to you, and you provide the best answer given the information that they've provided. This is not one of those cases. It's not I don't think that's a gotcha question. Folks in the chat room going, that's a gotcha question. It's not a gotcha question. There's only one good answer here. I don't think any of these others applied at all. I think IPsec is the only possible choice. And that's what you'll see on the exam as well, is these questions will jump out at you and say, yes, here's the question, and here's the possible answer, and here's the only possible answer it could be. And if they're not jumping out at you on the exam, well, you probably should have spent more time working through that. So IPsec was your only option. 78% of you said IPsec. That's a pretty good number. You guys are doing pretty well with these, and that would be why it would be the best answer for you. Well done with that one. If you chose D, IPsec, got it absolutely right. Let's do another question. Let's do another gotcha question with these gotcha questions on this. It's not a gotcha question. Here's one. Here's your gotcha question of the moment. You are connecting a new device to the network. That's good. You got a new device. What is it? I didn't put that in here. You've got a new machine and you've added it to the network, but the DHCP assigned IP address is in the incorrect subnet. Well, that's not good. Which of these would be the most likely reason for this issue? Why would that be a problem? Fortunately, given you some gotcha answers that you can go through. So maybe this will be some of those things being through this list. Let's see if you think one of these might be a possible reason for this issue. You're connecting this new device to the network. The DHCP assigned IP address is in the incorrect subnet. Which of these would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be A, the DHCP server is misconfigured, B, the switch interface is in the incorrect VLAN, C, STP is not enabled, D, the switch is not using 802.1q, or E, SSID broadcasts are disabled? One of those would be the best or the most likely reason for this issue. That's another type of terminology they use in the exam as the most likely reason for a particular thing to happen. So you have to know the most likely reason. You have to know the best possible answer. You have to know the first thing that you would do when you are troubleshooting a particular kind of problem. Those are the things that are really the most important on this exam for understanding their methodology of making you think about what would be the best, which one would be the most likely. Because I can see here, there's at least two answers here that could be the reason. So the real question, though, was which of these would be the most likely reason? So if you're looking at this and thinking there might be 2 or 3 or 4, or maybe all of them could be possible, but only one of them is the most likely. So you do have to think about that as you're looking at the question and finding out, what are they doing? What are they looking for on these? There was only one answer in this question, but it could be more than one thing. Let's figure out which one's most likely. So this is really going to test your knowledge of the technology, test your knowledge of how they're implementing the technology, test your knowledge of the industry. And that's what the exam is really getting to. It's more than just understanding definitions. It's more than just understanding topics or what the acronym of a word might be. You're not going to get any questions like that. What does TFTP stand for? You're not going to get any questions like that. Nope. You're going to get questions about how you would implement TFTP. How would you set up a firewall rule to restrict TFTP? That's what they're looking for. So let's find out how we did with this one. You're connecting a new device to the network. The DHCP assigned IP address is in the incorrect subnet. Which of these would be the most likely reason for the issue? And we got majority. I was going to say we're torn, but the numbers are actually between 1 and 2. There's a number 1 and a number 2 that we've chosen, and all the others sort of dropped away, didn't they? So the switch interface is in the incorrect VLAN. 60% of you chose that one. 36% of you, though, chose the DHCP servers misconfigured. We're almost half and half by only about 10 points. We got some others here. STP is not enabled. Nobody chose that one. We've got the switch is not using 802.1q. This is only 1% of you chose that one, and only 2% chose that SSID broadcasts are disabled. So this is one that we really do have to figure out which one these could be. It looks like we could have gone either way with this one in trying to troubleshoot this particular problem. You will run into this problem. If you work on a network, you're managing this network, you're going to run into this exact problem where you've plugged in a device not on the right subnet. I actually ran into this problem the first time they hooked up a cable modem for me. Finally, cable modems were finally available. This is obviously many years ago. They plugged it in, and I got an IP address, and the IP address wasn't working. I did a packet capture and saw broadcasts on my local subnet that were from IP addresses that weren't even close to being on my subnet. And try calling the folks at the company, at the cable company, and ask them, I'm seeing I'm on the wrong subnet. Have you tried turning it off and back on again? Well, we could do that, but it's not on the right subnet. You're just getting, and we had to go on and on and on about that particular piece of it. This is a problem with your VLAN. This is when you're plugged into a device, and for some reason, the switch has put you on a completely different network than where you really should be. And that completely different network is a different VLAN number. And on most networks, you're probably going to have multiple VLANs a switch could be assigned to. And that's usually how you're configuring it. On a particular switch, there's a particular physical interface, could be a logical interface as well. But let's say a physical interface we're plugging into, and you configure the switch and say, we're plugging that device into port 3 on the switch. Let's tell port 3 on the switch we're going to put you in VLAN 50. Because VLAN 50 is for our printers. Well, then we unplug the printer and we plug our laptop in and thinking, why am I on the network with all the printers? I can't communicate to the network I need. Well, that's because we have to change the configuration of the switch to put you on VLAN 100, which is where the normal users are, and not VLAN 50, which is where the printers are. That happens all the time. If you're having problems communicating between switches, there could be an issue with the trunking. Usually when you're connecting switches together, it's through 802.1q trunk. And if one particular VLAN is not able to communicate between switches, you may have left off a VLAN number on the trunk configuration. So it doesn't, maybe it allows it into the trunk, but doesn't recognize it when you get to the other side, or maybe it doesn't even let it go across the trunk to begin with. So you want to be sure they are configured properly on both sides of that trunk. So you change the VLAN configuration on your switch, you pull out the cable, or you reset the interface that's on the device, and now it should be able to recognize it's on the right VLAN. It requests a DHCP IP address that is on the correct VLAN. It's assigned the correct IP address finally. That's how you solve that particular problem. So there's the possible answers. The 36% of us said the DHCP server is misconfigured, which certainly could be the case, but that's a pretty unusual problem to run into. Usually your pool of addresses is associated with a particular subnet, and if that was the problem, everybody would be having a problem, not just you. And that wasn't part of the question. The question was really about you as an individual, and it's very unusual to have that kind of problem on a DHCP server. Once you set up the DHCP server, it's automatic. But switch interfaces being in the incorrect VLAN happen all the time. Speaking as someone who walked around with evaluation equipment, I was plugging in equipment to people's networks all the time during the week, completely foreign environment, walking in for the first time. We're going to plug this in. We'll ask for a DHCP address, and people say, oh, it's not the right subnet. I need to reconfigure the switch and put it in the right subnet. There they go. And then we reset the interface, and now we're in the right subnet. Happens all the time for this. So that's something you might want to look at as you're thinking about configuring VLANs. How am I going to work through that piece of it? There's a ton of information on this exam. It deals with everything from these protocols and switches configurations and troubleshooting and subnetting. And you have to know cable types. You have to know wiring schemes. You have to know all of these things. Now, fortunately, all of it's in my videos. Unfortunately, once you're finished watching the video, if you haven't made any notes, you're not going to have any type of documentation as to what was there. But I've already made notes for you. So you've got these course notes available. These are my N10006 course notes, where I've taken every bit of text and every graphic from every video in my Network Plus course. And let me say that again. It's every single video. I've taken every bit of text and every single graphic, and I've put it into this document, which now, by the way, I think we start at 15 pages. It's 65 pages long. There's a PDF version of this you can get right now and download, and you've got it available. 65 pages of this at professormesser.com/NPCN. It's $15. If you wanted to pay a little bit more, I've got a physical version where I just effectively it's a pass through the dollars for you. I don't really make anything on the physical version, but some people like to have a physical version. So I'm fine with that. You can buy a physical version. I ship it to you. That's easy. And if you buy the physical version, you get the digital version too. So it's a double whammy. I just throw that one in for free. I figure if you're buying the physical one, you're paying the extra money, the least I could do is give you the digital version. So that's something nice to have. All available on the site. Check it out. There's some information out there that can help you decide if it's right for you. ProfessorMesser.com/NPCN. It's also a great way to support the website. All of my videos and everything I do, I make absolutely free to everyone. But for some reason, my children like to eat. So I like to be able to buy food for them. So one way I do that is you can buy this, $15, and every penny of that goes back to keeping this running. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Would not be able to do it without you. And I think they're pretty good course notes. I like giving you something for your money. We ship internationally. Anywhere that I can ship, I will ship. Absolutely. I know. Why do the kids want to eat so much? I don't know either. Let's do another question. Here's the question I have for you. Which of the following would be the best use of IEEE 1905.1? I'm not making this up, by the way. This is a real question. You'll see there's real answers there. Which of the following would be the best use of IEEE 1905.1? Is the possible answer A, prevent loops on a switch network? Is it B, connect to remote sites over 10 gigabit Ethernet? Is it C, connect multiple VLANs across switches? Is it D, connect multiple home network types together? Or is it E, require authentication before gaining access to the network? One of those is the best use of IEEE 1905.1. If you think you know the answers, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and you can answer it right there. Do not answer in the chat room. Not a good idea to have that there. This is one where this is something directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. But again, I didn't want to ask you for a definition because the exam's not going to ask you for a definition. They're going to ask you, how is this technology implemented? How is this technology used? How does it interact with other technologies? That's what they want you to know. So I tried to create a question here that would prompt that information for you to try to figure out 1905.1, whatever that is from IEEE. That's what we're going to focus on with this question anyway. If I look at the question, are there other possible answers here? Really only one good answer here. So that's one we do have to know. This is directly from the exam objectives. So as you're going through this and thinking, I don't recognize that piece, you need to make sure you get the exam objectives. We'll talk about that in just a moment as well. Those become incredibly important. Make sure you have those. Those could be a make or break. The exam objectives are incredibly important. And if you don't have them, you're missing. You're doing yourself a disservice. You really are missing out on exam details, because CompTIA tells you so much in the exam objectives, almost like cheating. Let's see how we did with this one. How do we do? Let's click. Well, not quite a majority. In fact, we're kind of tied for a couple of these. 46% of you chose D, connect multiple home network types together. We have kind of a tie for second, though, between B, connect 2 remote sites over 10 gigabit Ethernet, and C, connect multiple VLANs across switches. About 16, 17, 18% of you said that. 10% of you said require authentication before gaining access to the network, which sounds like a good idea to me. And 9% said prevent loops on a switched network. So which one of these would be associated with IEEE 1905.1? They have such a flair for marketing at IEEE, don't they? They really know how to make a technology leap off the page. We'll name it 1905.1. This is though something you may find that you're using without you even realizing that it was there. This is something that tries to bring together all of these technologies in your house and get everything working together. You've got wireless in your network. You may have power line networking in your house, which is sketchy, but can work in some scenarios. You've got Ethernet networks that you've got in your house. You've got multimedia over coax, which you often find in a home theater type environment. So 1905.1 kind of brings them all together and gets them all working as one. This can be useful to have that there, have this type of technology available in your house. It's an interesting idea. I don't know that it has really been implemented in a way that would make it as popular as some people would like. The idea, though, is you've got all these pieces of equipment. You've got maybe even have a television. You've got a cable box. Why can't the television and cable box talk to each other over the existing HDMI connection? Why do I need another network link? Why don't I just plug into the cable box with my network, and the cable box can feed the stream to the television? That's the idea behind this. It's a great idea to have that there. If you're trying to figure out more details about this, this is from the Intent 006, section 5.4 of your exam objectives. The video name for this is Ethernet Standards. It's in there for the IEEE 1905.1. So here, almost 50%, 49%, we'll say we got a majority that said connect multiple home network types together. D is the correct answer. That's what you were shooting for with IEEE 1905.1. 16% said connect 2 remote sites over 10 gig Ethernet. That is not IEEE 1905.1. That's 802.3 dot something, isn't it? That's definitely Ethernet. If you're communicating over 10 gig, that's just a standard Ethernet connection. 15% said connect multiple VLANs across switches. That would be trunking. 802.1Q would be that one. IEEE 802.1Q, it turns out. 11% said require authentication before gaining access to the network. 802.1X, right? Is that the one? The dot one, the dot X, the X that's in there is the most important part. That authentication part becomes useful to have that there. And preventing loops on a switch network is spanning tree. So that would be only 8% of you chose that one. That would not be the correct answer. Still a good idea. You should probably have spanning tree turned on, but it has nothing to do with IEEE 1905.1. It's so appealing, though. I want to stop loops. Why wouldn't I choose that? Of course I would choose it. Well, you wouldn't choose it because it has nothing to do with IEEE 1905.1. It's 802.3AD, I guess, is the latest version of spanning tree, isn't it? Is it AD, or am I thinking of link ag? It's one of those where they all blend together after a while, don't they? So you have to really know what the differences are in some of these standards. Fortunately, CompTIA doesn't use a lot of these standards names on their exams. They have a couple of them listed in the exam objectives, and that's really it. So make sure you don't go through. I have people that are just memorizing so many different port numbers and IEEE. You should only have to remember what's in the exam objectives. There's a set limit of port numbers, and there aren't very many IEEE numbers in there to know about. Well, we do use them. We use those IEEE numbers whenever we're working through those pieces of it. So make sure you know them because we use them in the industry quite a bit. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, some of you like to get 1 hour of webinar credit by watching this, I'll be glad to send you an email that certifies that you must have done it. But you have to follow this process. If you don't follow this process, you will not get a certified email from me. So follow this process. You go to the top of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that link. There you'll put in your name, you'll put in your email address. Make sure they're right because I'm going to send you an email back. And it will ask you to put something in a message box. You can put whatever you'd like. I'm reading through these myself, so you can put any message you would like, but somewhere in there, you have to put in the message IEEE 1905.1. Make sure you put that somewhere in the message. If you do that, you must have been able to watch this. You must have seen it, and I'll provide you with the credit. This also applies if you're watching on a replay. It also applies if you watch any of my study groups on a replay. Now, for Network Plus, I think you can accumulate 6 webinar credits to renew your Network Plus. I think it's 10 webinar credits for Security Plus. It may be 4 webinar credits for A+. There's only a certain number you can do of different types. So you can't watch all of my study groups, accumulate 100 CEUs, and it doesn't work that way. They're already ahead of you. It's like the IRS. They know you're going to use that loophole, so they've already closed it. So you can't use that one. So make sure that you follow that process. Click Contact Us link, put in your name, your email. Somewhere in there also put that it's January of 2018. Some of this becomes a little more difficult. And put IEEE 1905.1. Make sure you have all of those pieces in there. I've got another question for you, though. We're not done yet. We got stuff to go through. Let's go through others. Here's another question for you. This one dealing with switches. Since we're on the switch tear today, trying to figure out how switches work, this is a good one to go through. And all the switch stuff. Which of the following would not commonly be part of a managed switch? Would it be A, traffic prioritization, B, VLAN support, C, open shortest path first protocol, D, simple network management protocol, or E, spanning tree protocol? One of those would not commonly be part of a managed switch. Now, when I look at that list, there's quite a bit to go through there. Which of those would not commonly be part of a managed switch? Make sure you make your options available. Have a look and choose at professormesser.com/QA. QA stands for, not sure what that stands for. What's QA stand for? Don't know. But you go there, professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to answer the question. Don't know what QA stands for. This one's not so bad, but it is one where you do have to make sure you read through the questions and you have to make sure you read through the answers to be able to put them in the right context, which sort of is an important thing when it comes to answering exam questions. Oh, thank you, chat room. QA stands for question answer. There we go. I wonder why I put that. The folks in the chat room asking, can I ship course notebooks worldwide? Absolutely. When you check out, it'll give you an option. It's kind of costly. International shipping is not cheap, even for just a book. So it's a little more expensive to do it internationally, but I will absolutely do that. If you pay for the shipping, I'll send it wherever you'd like. Becomes easy to be able to do that. Work through all those pieces. Which of the following would not commonly be part of a managed switch? What would it? What would it be? What would it be? Maybe we know. I'm going to take a sneak peek, by the way. I get to look at the answers before you do. So I get to see them as you're doing them interactively, live. I see them counting up, counting down. Have all those pieces there. So which one would not be part of it? Some of you have some managed switches. So this might be a little bit easier for you to be able to do it. Let's see how we did with this one. Not quite a majority. I try to shoot to get 50% of you getting it right and 50% of you getting it wrong, which sounds a little self-defeating, but that's what I shoot for on these questions. But we're pretty close to that. 45% said C, open shortest path first protocol. That's what most of you think would not commonly be part of a managed switch. Let's look at the other answers. Almost a tie for second, a three-way tie. We've got simple network management protocol, traffic prioritization, and VLAN support. And only 9% chose spanning tree protocol because I love spanning tree protocol, and I should just put it as an answer on every single question, apparently. So that's one that does come in handy to know those things. But are we right with this one? Well, let's talk about managed switches. We need to figure out what a managed switch really is. A managed switch is one that provides some additional functionality that allows you to manage what it's doing. This is compared to an unmanaged switch, which is effectively a bunch of dumb Ethernet ports you plug into and it switches between them. But sometimes you need more than just dumb Ethernet interfaces. You need some more flexibility. You need additional functions. You need additional features. That's what you would find in a managed switch. One of those additional features would be VLAN support, being able to put different interfaces on different VLANs. We talked about this earlier. That becomes really useful. Also becomes useful to be able to set up trunks between switches. Those are capabilities that are commonly found in managed switches. Another capability you might see is traffic prioritization. Many switches allow you to allow certain types of traffic to have a higher priority than other types of traffic. So if somebody's downloading a big file, you could set the traffic prioritization to give voice traffic a higher priority so that when you're communicating over the phone, you're not getting a lot of dropouts and a lot of jitter. You hear a normal phone conversation, even though somebody's transferring a bunch of data in the background. Redundancy support is useful. Spanning tree, being able to set up link aggregation. That's another great capability for managed switches. Being able to manage the device technically is the definition of a managed switch. And a very common way to manage these devices is using SNMP, the Simple Network Management Protocol. And another capability I use a whole lot, port mirroring, being able to take all the traffic coming in a particular interface or particular VLAN and copy that traffic to another interface that you could use for capturing packets. Becomes useful to have that there. So those are the things that you would commonly see on a managed switch. So what you would not see on a managed switch is anything that's not that. So we know that the spanning tree protocol, absolutely part of a managed switch. Simple network management protocol, it's part of the name, part of this managed switch. SNMP, absolutely part of a managed switch. Traffic prioritization, yes, that's what you would find in a managed switch. VLAN support, yep, you would find that in a managed switch. The only thing here that you would not commonly find as part of a managed switch is the Open Shortest Path First Protocol, or OSPF. That is a layer 3 routing protocol. We talked nothing in this question about routers, about layer 3, about anything. It's a dynamic protocol that routers can use to communicate between each other and make sure they know what types of networks are located where across the network. OSPF, very common to find on routers. And the 49% of you that answered C, Open Shortest Path First Protocol, got this one absolutely correct. That's one of those that whenever you start working through these questions, you do kind of have to spend some time thinking about what's there and what the different options are. And questions like this always throw me because the word not is in there. I have answered many exam questions where I completely missed the word not and answered the question in the positive. Which of these would be commonly part of a managed switch? Traffic prioritization. Yep, I know traffic prioritization is part of a managed switch. I don't even have to read the rest of the questions. Next one. Next. And we're just going through the list. If you have time, I go back and look at every single question if I have time at the end of the exam. And I go through every single one of them, whether I've marked them, whether I've flagged them or not. I look at all of them. And so I will go back through and I'm reading through which of the following would not commonly be part of a... Wait a second. The word not is here. I read it differently when I was rushing through this to get done. I completely answered this one wrong. Let me reset. Let's answer this question. So make sure it's so easy to reread the questions. If you've got the time left, why wouldn't you? You might find something weird like that you've done with you didn't even realize you did. You thought you got it 100% right. And it turns out you got it 100% wrong. And you really need to go through and reread that question. I mentioned earlier, you really have to get the exam objectives. Make sure that you go to the CompTIA website, go to Google and just look for CompTIA exam objectives. Put that in the Google machine. It will take you right to it. There is also a link on my website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, and it will take you to the page. It just redirects you over to CompTIA's website, so you know exactly where to find that information from. Look at the detail in these exam objectives. You do not get more detail than this, and in really almost anybody's exam objectives. Microsoft doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Nobody else does this. Take advantage of this. This could be your checklist. People always ask, how do I know when I'm ready to go take the exam? This will tell you. You should be able to go through the entire list of objectives and check off everything you know. If there's something you didn't check off, that's what you should be studying. You should know exactly what's in there. Make sure that you go through this list. I don't know why people don't, but it's a huge advantage for you to be able to do this. We've gone through an hour. This one I talked too much. I'm sorry. We didn't get through many questions this month. We'll try to get through more questions next month, but we've got another study group next month. We can do that. We go to, and the next one is on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2018. You can always find out when the next one is, though. If this is after February of 2018, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar. You can find out exactly when this is going to be. Comes in handy to know exactly when the next study group will be. There's also a calendar link on the top of the Professor Messer website. That's another one. But stick around. Although the Q&A is over, I'm just going to open up the phone lines. Well, I'll take questions from the chat room. I'll take questions off the phone. You can call in through Skype. I'll tell you exactly how to do all of those things. We got plenty to talk about. We're not even close to being done yet. Stick around. Make sure you follow what we're doing on Twitter. Subscribing on YouTube is an enormous advantage to me. Thank you so much for doing that already. If you subscribed, it helps so much. I have people at Google that now I can go to because they recognize that there's a very strong user base that needs these videos, and they'll help me however they need to. And I've run into challenges and problems they've been able to work through and fix for you, and you didn't even know it happened. All because you were able to support the site by subscribing to that YouTube channel. That's why people always tell you to smash that button. That's why they're always saying that, because it does help in the long run. Don't forget about my course notes, professormesser.com/NPCN. We didn't have a chance to talk about GTS Learning's live labs. I can always show you that later if you'd like to see it. Live labs are available online. You don't need to set up a lab yourself. It's all about the Network Plus exam. You'll learn everything you need to know from a hands-on perspective. And the special price if you follow this link, professormesser.com/netlabs. Also, we've got these study groups every month for not just Network Plus, but for A Plus and Security Plus. We're doing another one for Security Plus a week from today at noon Eastern Time. Of course, you can check the calendar for that. And stick around. We've got plenty more to talk about in the after show. Some of you have to leave now. Sorry to see that, but we'll hope you stick around and get some questions answered in the after show. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. See, it's 1905.1. That was the important question of the day, apparently. I can't remember all of those for those pieces. The GTS Learning package includes their live labs and their book. Does not include the course notes. Course notes, their GTS Learning is, they're a great bunch of people. I like them. I talk to them all the time. I spoke to the owner this week, not today, but earlier this week. Fantastic people to work with. I would not associate myself with other people, but they have their own thing going on. They got their own products, and I don't have my products combined with that. But fortunately, the money you saved by following my link is more than enough to purchase the course notes, and you'll still have money left over. How about that? Have those pieces available. Let's get the phone lines up and running. You also can answer questions in the chat room, professormesser.com/live. The chat room that is there. I'm watching things go by. It's where all those questions are coming from. But I need to get the phone lines up and running, and I'm the only one here. So let's start this up, shall we? And it needs to log in again. Let's go to my shows. We're going to host a show, and then I'll give you the phone lines. You can do all of that. Let's start the show. And now let me call into the show. Just like you have to call into the show, I have to call into the show. Why is that? I don't know either. But there we go. It's on the cloud. That's why. We can't do a show without having something in the cloud. So let's call in to that line. Is it going to beep, beep, beep on me? No, because I don't have it turned on. Now it's turned on.
Call in studio.
Yeah, let's type a thing on my screen and hit that.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, do I have to keep saying this every time that's redundant?
Welcome.
See? Welcome. How nice of you to welcome me to my own call-in line. If you'd like to call in, you're more than welcome to. The number 855-785-7545. That number is toll-free anywhere in the continental United States. If you'd like to call from outside the continental United States, or you want to use Skype and call for absolutely free, just put a +1 at the beginning. No Skype minutes required. Call anywhere in the world. +1 855-785-7545. That's 855-785-RJ45. See how that works? That was intentional, how I did that. So surprised they even gave me the option of doing that. So I took it. I took the option when they gave it to me. Let's have a look at the chat room and go through here. Past the Strata IT Fundamentals, not called Strata anymore, but the IT Fundamentals exam from CompTIA. That is one step just below the A+. That's usually that's the one you take just prior to going A+, although there's a good bit of overlap there. So you may not run into much of that, having those pieces there. Let's go to the phone lines, though. I've got some folks that are already calling in. Make sure I've got these phone lines up and running. We've got the 770 area code. Are you their caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Patrick. How are you doing?
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, I'm actually taking a Network Plus class tomorrow, actually starting tomorrow morning,
Nice.
and I just had a question regarding, what kind of prep work would you recommend getting ready for the exam? I mean, I heard it's pretty straightforward, unlike A+, where you kind of have to do your own, troubleshooting questions, kind of think about it. Network Plus is more straightforward in terms of questions and answers. Is that true?
I don't think so. I would not categorize it that way.
Okay.
Network Plus has probably doesn't have quite as many command lines that you have to know, but there's still a good chunk of those. And there's a whole section of the exam objectives that's all about troubleshooting. You have to know how to troubleshoot these. In fact, they added just a few more on the newer version that's coming out later this year. There's a real emphasis in troubleshooting. So if they don't just ask you a definition of a thing or tell me what this means. They really are wanting you to step through troubleshooting type problems. I find it very similar to what they've done with A+ and very similar to what they've done with Network Plus. I think some people, though, I think they find the networking piece is much more deterministic. There's always a much better direct path to solving a problem. With an operating system in Windows, finding the control panel, I can do that in like 4 different ways. I can get to the control panel in Windows. With networking, there's one way to check to see if a machine is up. You ping it. And that's kind of it. So I think for a lot of people, they like that linearity where there's one path on a rail you go through to solve a problem. And I think maybe that's what people mean when they say a little more straightforward.
That makes more sense. Okay. Well, that's all I have. Thank you very much. I love your content.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate the call. That's one when the exams, and you don't know because the exams change all the time. They give new questions. They have different ideas they're using when they ask the question. It's a little bit more of a challenge. Somebody in the chat room asking if CompTIA certs can give you college credit. That depends on the organization. At my local community college, they absolutely give you college credit for having a CompTIA certification. Maybe not all of them. Only some colleges do that. And certainly there are some colleges don't give you any credit. So it just depends on where you go and what you find. Let's go to the 304 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Jack from West Virginia.
Hey, Jack. Welcome. What can we do for you?
I had 2 quick questions about the first one. I think is pretty simple. It's from the Pocket Prep app that you advertise on your site sometimes.
Yep.
There was a question that had to do with when you're on a network and it's what is running to stop collisions, or it's make sure that a host can communicate to the network. And one of the options is full duplex, and the other one is CDMA-CD. And the answer I chose was full duplex because, to me, that made sense. The answer that it says was CDMA collision detection. So I was wondering, is that technically right? Like, I thought full duplex meant that it was you can send and listen at the same time.
Well, I haven't seen the question. Just from the way you've described it, though, it sounds a little vague, doesn't it? It sounds a tad bit vague, Jack, because there should be, whenever you have a question, and I did not write the questions on the Network Plus, the A Plus, or the Security Plus part of the Pocket Prep. I do have a Cisco Q&A that I did for Pocket Prep, which is my relationship that I have with them. But I like their app. I really like what they put together.
Oh yeah, me too.
But that does sound like one of those questions that's a little bit vague. The question should, in my mind, should have two steps. It should ask you something, make you have to think about something else in relation to that question, and then the possible answers, there should be a very clear understanding of what the answer was looking for. And I get the idea of what they were trying to say there, which is how are you even able to use a network unless you have the CSMA-CD? How are you even able to do that on Ethernet unless you have that underlying functionality, which effectively is the definition of Ethernet? That's effectively what Ethernet is, which is the CSMA-CD, the ability to recognize there's a carrier, understand when you're able to communicate, recognize if there are any collisions, which, as we all know, is sort of an outdated term as well. But that's the underlying history and functionality of Ethernet. That's probably what they were shooting for with that question. It kind of fell a little short, it sounds like.
Gotcha.
But I think you were on the right track.
Yeah. Yep. All right, I understand that. I was just trying to make sure that it wasn't like CDMA /CD wasn't running with full duplex running as well.
Well, that's one of those things where if you're looking for collision detection, if you're doing full duplex, you're never going to detect one. So you may be doing collision detection.
I was just making sure.
Yep, you're right on the right path. If you're at this point where you're questioning the validity of a question, you're doing just fine with your studies.
All right, glad to hear that.
That's right.
And the only other question I had was, I was getting a bit confused by wide area network types and if they like fit inside each other. Like, is a frame relay a packet switched and a leased line, and stuff like that? Like,
well, you've got that is one where it does help to kind of lay everything out. You have a packet switched or circuit switched, and that's it. Some of these you can define as a leased line, where you're buying a line from somebody. It's sort of an outdated term these days because almost everything we're using, we're buying from someone else. You're not putting in your own wide area network and sending it across and buying your own right of way. There are people that do that. They'll buy dark fiber and build their own networks, but even they're not in charge of the physical layer like you're doing when you're buying a leased line. Leased line we tend to associate with the older T1, E1, T3, E3 technologies, where you bought a line and that was yours and nobody else could use it, and it was super expensive. And pretty much everybody's gone away from those at this point and gone to more of the packet switch technology instead of a circuit switch technology. But it's helpful if you lay those out and really get an understanding.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, I think the big thing is I have nothing to like relate with the T1E1 things. Like, I just, with the packet switched and the MPLS stuff. That stuff I can like relate to things I understand, but when it comes to the T1 stuff, just don't get it. So yeah, I'll just have to write that out.
If you have the ability to walk through somebody's data center or go through their communications room and have somebody point at things and say, here's where our T1 lines come in. Here's where we've got some T3s coming in. Here's where the old frame relay DMARC was. Now we've moved everything to MPLS, and here's the new DMARC. having that connection to those physical things in a room sometimes helps too. And the exam, of course, recommends that you already have some experience in networking, and I think they're hoping that you have the access to that, but there's a lot of people that don't. And so you do have to kind of look at the picture and say, okay, there's the picture of one. Let me see if I can at least compartmentalize that in my brain and get it ready for an exam.
All right, gotcha. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Have a good
Jack.
day.
I appreciate it. That's one of the challenges with OSI model, with some of these older technologies you may not have access to. It's hard to get an idea what it is without ever having access to it. It's all theoretical in your mind. Back to the 770 area code. I'm going to try to hit the talk button there. Caller, are you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Nick and Georgia.
Hey, Nick, welcome. What can we do for you?
Hey, so I'm a management information systems major at Georgia College right now,
Okay.
and I'm about to graduate this semester.
Nice.
I got my A+ certification a few months ago, but I was wondering if you would recommend getting the Security Plus certification next or the Network Plus certification.
It's a little
Like what jobs would look for.
It differs depending on where you are, not just what country you're in, but what part of this country you happen to be in. For example, if you are planning to go to DC and get a job up there, a huge number of companies up there have something to do with the federal government. They're a federal government contractor for accounting, for IT, for building military equipment, for doing all of these things that surround the federal government. And all of those federal government jobs have the minimum requirement of a Security Plus. So a lot of the people that are in Maryland and Virginia that are coming to my site are coming to my site, skipping over A+, skipping over Network Plus, going straight to Security Plus. That's one of the few parts of this country where I'd even recommend doing something like that. I personally think that everybody should be getting networking foundations to be able to do whatever they wanted to do, to go into cloud technologies, to go into database management, to understand how operating systems can be managed. I think networking is the fundamental foundation, but it's not up to me. It's up to what the people are hiring for in the particular area where you're looking for a job. So where you happen to be, you need to go do some research. This is where you could start doing some background work and putting things together and creating a strategy. A lot of people spend a lot of time gathering statistics on their favorite football team, and they never go out to see what their favorite statistics might be for people doing IT hiring in their area. But you should create a spreadsheet. Find out if you go to the dice.com, the monsters, the online career builders, whatever the sites are that you like to go to look for jobs. What are people asking for? Are they asking for Network Plus? Are they asking for Security Plus? Are they asking for Microsoft certifications? Are they asking for Cisco? Whatever they're asking for, that's what you should be getting. Whether it's really applicable to what you're interested in at this very second doesn't necessarily have priority. You're getting out of college, you've got a degree, you're going to need a job, and the best way to do that is find out what people are asking about. Also, don't forget that there are places in your local area to go meet these people before you even get into a position where you have to ask them for a job. There are Microsoft user groups, there are Cisco user groups, there are VMware user groups, and usually they are in areas where you can go to the meeting, they'll let you in. There might be a $10, $15 charge per year or whatever it happens to be if you want to be a member so that somebody can pay for the pizza that they have. They have a guest speaker, but more importantly, you get to meet the people who are in your geographical area who are already managing Microsoft devices and servers and services, that are already dealing with Cisco equipment, that are already working with VMware, and you get to know them. So that now when you walk in the door to interview with those organizations, you can say, oh yeah, I know Roger, he's in the cloud area over there. We go to the same user group meeting together. People like to hire people they know, people they can trust. And if there's a relationship you can build there, that's what's going to help you, not just right out of college, but those relationships will help you throughout your entire IT career.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
Answers my question.
Best of luck.
All right. Bye.
Good luck with that MIS. The Management Information Systems comes in handy. to have that too. It's always good. I love the business side, getting that business side of the degree, and then adding on the IT piece to it. There's some great advantages there. We'll go back to the phones in a moment. From the chat room, folks are asking my opinions on getting the Certified Ethical Hacker or the CISA. I don't personally recommend getting anything from the folks that take care of the Certified Ethical Hacker certification, not because the Certified Ethical Hacker certification is bad. The content on the exam is pretty good, but the EC Council, which is the Certified Ethical Hacker program, has been hacked so many times that whenever you give them personal information, you might as well just assume that personal information can end up anywhere, it seems. They don't have a good track record for keeping your data private. Maybe they'll be great going forward. Maybe they've turned the corner and now they're going to be fantastic with making sure that the copy of your passport doesn't end up on the internet like they did with other people. That's the problem with the CEH. I've gone through the CEH exam objectives. I think they're great. I think those exam objectives are pretty good. But I also think that's why CompTIA has come on strong and said, we've got other security certifications. They're really competing directly with those. There's others that you can go to from SANS and OSCP and some others as well that are probably a little more trustworthy with the content, with the information. But if you're learning what's in the CEH certification, you're on the right track. That's some pretty good things to know and working through some of those challenges. I just worried about what they're going to do with my information. If I wanted people to see my license, I would just put it online myself. I don't need them to do it. But if you look for Edward Snowden CEH passport, you'll be able to see his passport. I don't want that to happen to you. Hopefully that won't. We'll come back to the chat room in just a moment. People asking some OSI questions. We'll come back to that. Let's currently go to the 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from? 661. Are you there? There's a beeping noise you hear when I pick up the phone on your side. We don't hear it on our side, but hopefully it jostles people enough. But we're not getting anything from 661. There may be one. I'm going to stick you back in the queue, though. Maybe you can check your microphone and work through any problems you might have. If you're calling in through Skype, you can always call the Skype testing service and check Skype, where you can talk to Skype and then they'll repeat back to you what they heard. And you can check your audio that way. That comes in handy. Instead, let's go to 347 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Jay. I'm calling from New York.
Welcome,
City.
Jay. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I'm starting for the CompTIA A+. Would this be the proper chat to ask it in?
Sure. Why not? It's an open phone line. You can ask anything you'd like, Jay.
Okay. I just have a question about getting the CompTIA A+ cert, which is if I have 2 months to study and hypothetically I do have good working memory, how many hours a week should I study? I'm just curious.
Everybody's a little bit different. And this applies not just to A+, but also Network Plus and Security Plus and really almost any other certification. But the tip I'll give you really is specific to CompTIA, because CompTIA has given you such a very good list of everything you need to know for the exam in their exam objectives. They've effectively made a checklist for you. And so there are people that have come to my site that have taken the A+, they've studied 2 weeks, and they took the A+ and they passed it. And like you, they were probably very good at remembering details, and they obviously had a lot of time on their hands to be able to do this. But it is all about what's on the exam objectives. CompTIA will tell you in the exam objectives, we can ask you anything. It doesn't have to be from the exam objectives, but it turns out they really do. Most of what they ask is directly from the exam objectives. They very rarely go off that list. And everybody's a little bit different with how they learn. So I would recommend you use that as your list. Go through that. If you find that you've got half of this down in a week, you've gone through this, you know it's solid, you know all the topics, you've done the Q&A, you're feeling really good about how you're memorizing this information, you may be able to take the test in a couple of weeks. Other people like me, I tend to take months to go through this content. I have to churn through it. I got to chew it up a little bit. I got to test different things. I'm a little bit slower of a test taker, so I'm not a good example of someone who would be able to get through something very quickly. But if you're a good studier, people have done it in 2 weeks. I would say the average that are coming to my site are able to take one of those exams in about 2 to 3 months. So that's the average. Obviously, half the people are faster than that. Half the people are slower than that. So it's going to be very different depending on what you know, your experience, how fast you can study, how much time you have available during the day, and how quickly you can grasp some of the content that's there. But it's really up to you, and maybe that can give you an idea of how much you should or should not be studying. I think after the first week, you'll know.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Messer. I look forward to buying your content quite soon.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate the support, and good luck.
Have a good day.
You too. That's thank you also everybody else for your support too. The purchase of the study guides, the purchase of the offline courses of my I have Q&A for A+, the pop quiz collection books, would not be able to do this without you. Thank you so much. There's a question. We're going to quickly go back to the phone calls for someone who's holding there. But quickly, someone mentioned here in the chat room about the OSI model. The question of the OSI model was, isn't everything at OSI layer 1? Now, this is what you run into when you try to take this concept of OSI and start applying it to all these different topics. Everything's connected to the network. It has to get a network signal. Therefore, isn't everything on OSI layer 1? Well, that's not how we reference the OSI model. The OSI model, we talk about topics like a router at layer 3, a switch at layer 2, an application at layer 7, really talking about the layer that particular device operates on. Well, yes, it will be connected to the network. They'll be in layer 1 piece. There'll be a layer 2 as that particular network interface card figures out if any of the traffic coming to that device, it matches the internal MAC address of that Ethernet card. It sends it up to the operating system. It breaks off the MAC address. It looks at the IP address information, determines if it's something that it should be responding to, and then looks at the data inside of that. But when we talk about routers, we talk about switches, we're really talking about the highest layer of the OSI model that it operates on. That is the part when we say, what OSI layer does a router use? We're really talking about layer 3 because a router doesn't go up above that. Router could care less about port numbers and TCP and UDP port numbers. That's not how a traditional router does not work that way. There are some routers that do. There's some firewalls that look at applications. Traditionally, we thought firewalls are really layer 4 devices. So you're really looking to see how this operates. And I've in my video, I go through a practical example of using Google Mail. At what point are we using what part of the OSI stack as we use Google Mail to give people an idea of how to work through those? Let's go back to the phone lines, the 240 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Daniel. I'm calling from Maryland.
Oh, thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah. I just got my CompTIA certification.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah. But the job advertisement is a little bit frustrating. The requirement is just 2 years and 3 years. Will it be hard for me to get a job with 0 years of experience?
This is one of the challenges that anybody has who's trying to get into any industry. It's that catch-22 of everybody wants experience, but how am I going to get experience unless I get a job? And they're not going to give me a job unless I have the experience to go along with it. That is a challenge, especially for someone who is just out of school. You've just gotten some certifications. You don't have a job in the industry that you could reference yet, but there are a number of things you can do. One of them is to volunteer. There may be someone you do know in the industry who does work at an organization that needs people. For example, I'll give you an example. I worked at a third-party call center as a network data and voice network manager, voice and phone. And one of the things that we had to do often is build out a new section of the data center, of the call center. So suddenly we needed 50 more seats. Well, all 50 of those seats needed a computer. All 50 of those seats needed a phone. All 50 of those seats needed a desk set up. And of course, we had these long rows of desks that people would come in. They would set up the desks, and then we'd have to spend a weekend day or an overnight or doing something like that, going into the room and setting everything up. And it was really staging equipment. It was kind of dumb work, really. You take things out of a box, you put it on a desk, you plug in the right cables, you go to the next one. You turn it on, make sure it works, go to the next one. That type of thing, we always love to get warm bodies. We didn't care if somebody was in the call center taking phone calls and they just needed something to do on the weekends. We would bring them in just to take things out of boxes and put them on a desk. That's experience, by the way. And you are spending time with the people that do set up these workstations and set up the file servers and image those systems. And you're spending time learning from them as well. So there's some advantage to either volunteering in your area with a nonprofit or volunteering with someone you know who already works in the industry. And those people that work in the industry, by the way, know the other people in the industry that need people for those types of jobs too. So make sure you do the networking of people as much as you're doing the networking of networking equipment. Being able to have somebody tell you where you can go or be able to get that kind of experience can be really useful. Also, don't forget about setting up your own lab. This is one of the first questions a lot of people will ask when they sit down on an interview is they'll say, and I ask this question too, hey, tell me about the lab you have at home. Do you have equipment? What are you running? What do you do with it? What little projects have you set up? There should be all kinds of little projects you should be able to do and get set up to do, work through those. For example, maybe you set up a storage area network. You use some open source software with an old computer you had. Maybe you built a VMware server. Maybe you have a system like mine. I've got one to my bird feeder. So I set up streaming video. I've got an archive of storage onto a SAN. We're running RAID 5, a RAID 5 derivative. It's connected via gigabit Ethernet. I've connected out to the camera. I've got connected to a power over Ethernet switch. It only supports 100 megabit, but that's plenty to support the video. That's what I want people to tell me about their lab. Because I know you had to connect all these things together. You had to build the VLANs. You had to put together the hardware. You had to put together the software. And although in a number of organizations, that's not really experience, like you haven't been working places for years, that still counts. And in fact, that counts pretty strongly towards this whole idea of getting those things set up. So don't miss those opportunities to network with people and build your own labs, because now you have an experience and things you can talk about when you sit down in that interview.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling.
I appreciate it.
Sure. Very glad. Thank you. Appreciate the call. That's it's becoming more and more of a common question too. I see there's people on Reddit. We'll talk about this all the time, especially the IT career subreddit or the CompTIA subreddit, where people talk about what questions should I be ready for in my exam. Having a nice lab, it gives you an opportunity with the technical people of that organization to talk tech. And in some cases to talk tech. Oh, there's a good one. Our home labs. Absolutely. That's a great one. Where people have gotten lab equipment. It doesn't have to be the latest stuff. In some cases, you can get most of this equipment for free from places that are throwing it away. Is it Home Lab with no S? Okay, it's Home Lab. Go to /r/Home Lab out on Reddit. It is a great resource to see what people are doing. And you may already have a project set up. You may tell people, maybe it's not even a lab. Maybe you can talk about setting up your house for the Internet of Things. You can talk about integrating your garage door with an older garage door opener by adding additional hardware. You can talk about setting up automated locks on your front door. You can talk about your Nest doorbell that captures the data and streams it up to the internet, what you do with it. Those are technical things that you're talking with somebody for a job that may have nothing to do with any of that. But it gives two technical people an opportunity to talk tech that at least you can prove to somebody the things you know and the way it works. It's very, very nice to have that capability there. A lot of fun to also set these things up and try different things. Maybe there's a project. I know there's a project I'd love to do. I wish I could find it. I've got it. There was one where someone set up their own router. They used an open source router software. You can buy a Linksys router and you can reflash it with a third-party routing software. And they were able to reflash it or use somebody else's that had some way to track. I want to say it wasn't through SNMP. It might have been through NetFlow. And they were able to capture information about how much traffic went across their network, how often. They were able to get bandwidth utilization. They were able to get a lot of detail about what information was going by and created these amazing graphs of the traffic over time. That is an amazing project to take into an interview and bring it up on your phone and show people, well, here's what's happening on my network right now. Have a look at these statistics. Have a look at what I've been gathering over the last month. And I was able to find these problems on my network because I was able to do that. That's good stuff, by the way. That is solid content, because when you get into a larger organization, that's what you're doing. You're setting up statistics. You're gathering stats from routers and switches and firewalls. You're doing log aggregation. You're doing log consolidation. You're running reports on that data. You are summarizing the data for storage over long periods. You're archiving the data so that you can go back to the raw information later. You're capturing packets so you can analyze. That's what you do. The more you can do this at home, capture your own packets. People in the chat room, a great idea, set up a pfSense firewall. That's a great one to do. You can even buy very inexpensive firewall hardware these days to run pfSense on that will do routing, it'll do switching, it'll do intrusion prevention, it'll identify applications. There's good stuff out there. That is very good to have available. And if you have different operating systems you can integrate with that, all the better. Those are the things that people are looking for. Don't be afraid to send your resume in when they say we need 2 years of experience. It usually says or equivalent. If somebody walked in and showed me, their pfSense configuration that they have at home and some of the reports they run all the time, that's some pretty good experience in my mind. I'd be very interested in knowing more about what that person knew about networking and setting up the firewall, and have they ever worked with other firewalls, and what do you think of this? Those are good conversations to have. And same thing, VMware, another good set of technologies. Linux, you can do almost anything. Those are fun things to do too. Those are great projects to do. So take advantage of those. You don't have to be completely oblivious to technology to walk in and talk tech and get that job. That's what people are looking for. And they may see something there like, oh, we think you're the kind of person who might work here pretty well. We know you haven't had the formal job. This will be your first, and we got a place for you, and we're going to stick you in there. You never know. That's a good way to do it, and being able to work through that. Sometimes you need hardware, and you have to be crafty. There may be people throwing out hardware. You may have to go down to Goodwill. In my area, there's a Goodwill store that has a bunch of tech. They bring all their computers and everything to one store. So you can go in that Goodwill, and they've got all the machines already tested and set up. And some of them are really old, and they sell them for relatively inexpensively. There's some really inexpensive stuff on eBay. You can find some great deals there and have people just send you equipment, even things that are broken. And if you know somebody in the industry, keep an eye open with them. Let them know you're looking for hardware. If they're getting rid of racks, if they're getting rid of old servers, they're throwing out equipment, you'll take it. You'll take it off their hands, and they'll clear the drives and hand it over to you. It's a great way to do it. Yeah, set up a DNS server. Set up other things. People are giving great ideas in the chat room of things you could be doing to make yourself more marketable when you walk in the door. Lab Gopher, a better way to eBay, extracts information from active eBay listings to help you easily find the right hardware for your needs. That's a great idea. So yeah, go to Lab Gopher. I didn't even know that existed. Find the best deals on servers. Find the best deals on, let's find one. Let's bring up Lab Gopher on my screen here. Labgopher.com. It's Gopher, like the gopher. Like this guy. Hey, Gopher. You can even set up filters by price, by CPUs, by memory, by storage, and find out what the deals are and what people are paying for it. So I can get an HP DL380 G6. Got a picture of it? There it is. No drives in it. Just ready to go for Orange computers. Price with shipping, $106. Anywhere in the U.S. 2U high, 12 gig of memory, not bad. L550, and then you can start finding the deals. Start hunting them down. Here's $97, less than $100. You got a Dell R310. What's that one look like? Love looking at the pictures. This is great. How did I not know about this? What's wrong with you people? Keep me up to date on these things. My problem is I go to eBay and then I start getting into some of the older, I like the older equipment. I want to get like the antique computer stuff, like the Mac that's up there right here. You know, there's a Cube Mac up there, got on eBay. It works. It's amazing. I really should set this up and run it one time we're here, just play around with it. It's got, I think, System 9 on it, and it's completely workable, usable, good stuff. You know, there's great things you can do. It's hard to see. There's the better shot of the Mac. Oh, it's the wrong side. Better shot of the Mac. There's the Mac Cube right there. Nice to have there. It's just above the picture of the joystick. Is that the joystick I have there? Yeah, picture of the joystick's kind of got a glare on it. You can't see it really well. And the Rubik's Cube, electronic Rubik's Cube that's there, and a motherboard from a LX machine. That was not the. I've got one of the old. Got my old Xbox around here somewhere. Motherboard. Need to put that up there. And of course, I need to check my cigars up there. So that's the summary of my world right there. For all those pieces, have all of those. I wish there was a way to save the chat to a file to view. Like, actually, I do have a way to view this as a. Do I have a way to view it as a file? I think I might be able to extract it if we have those there. But you can always go through here and make a note. And the person who will be not transcribing, but as you noted, when we do a replay of this, we put it out on YouTube. There's an extensive breakdown of everything that happened during this, by broken out by the timestamp. So you can click any part of this and go to exactly where you would like to go in here. And as I talk about different topics, we summarize those and put timestamps there. So you may be able to find it quicker later on. At least there's a little bit of something you can do along those lines and have those. So that's kind of we talked about home labs today. That was kind of the thing that I thought might be useful for you too. And now I learned about Lab Gopher, which means Mrs. Professor Messer is not going to be happy with me. My challenge is that my data center is a room here. It's an oversized closet I built out that's got plenty of room for the rack that I have in there. I have a full-size 19-inch rack. I could put a few more, but it needs to be quiet. I've got a door and I've got a way to make sure it stays cool. But I can't put anything super loud in there. So everything I bought smaller switches that have no fans in them. I bought systems that are designed with larger fans that are quieter. You know, I've had to think about that as we implement this. Everything that's here in the studio proper that's next to me, I have 19-inch racks on the left and right side. Can't even see. Here's a rack, of course, here. Silence going. And there's another rack to my left. See, audio equipment's in there, networking equipment. There's the video switchers in there. So I've got all of these things that are here, but they're very quiet and they're in a specialized set of doors so you can't hear them. I wonder if I open this up, can you even hear it? You can catch a little bit of that hum. This is closed. This is open. Yeah, not much difference there. That's another reason I've got this mic, this PR40. This is a Heil PR40 microphone, and it is very directional. You know, if you come off axis even a little bit, you can see that it really drops dramatically with the audio. So everything that's not directly in front of this microphone, you don't hear it. You know, I can have things happening outside, and another part of the room, just can't hear it. It's not there. So very useful. Yeah, Lab Gopher is just computer hardware, unfortunately. So make your own. You think there's a one you can do? Make a Lab Gopher 2. Make a Lab Gopherish that does other things. I like what they're doing with that. It's kind of a neat idea to have that there. I was about to close this up, but we got a call. So we're going to go back to the phone lines. 949 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Vernon. I'm calling from Orange County, California.
All right, Vernon. Welcome. What can we do for you?
So my question is more like a kind of a life advice. I was laid off last year and have been unemployed for.
I lost you, Vernon. Where'd you go, Vernon? And you've been unable to pay your phone line, and they just turned you off. Vernon just dropped out. We missed him. Oh, there he is. Wait, he's back. Hey, there he is.
Hey. Oh, all right. Yeah, I get horrible dropouts here where I'm at. You got me?
I gotcha. Go ahead. So, unfortunately, you're laid off.
Right.
Sorry to hear about that. And then something happened.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've been unemployed for about 10 months, and I've been using this opportunity to, I've been going to New Horizons and getting some, working towards A+, Network Plus, and some Microsoft Server certifications.
Nice.
And it's pretty overwhelming, the amount of information that I've been undertaking.
Sounds like it.
So I'm considering trying to go back to college and get a bachelor's degree in computer science.
Okay.
And I'm an older dude, closing in on 50. So I'm wondering how realistic, in your opinion, how realistic do you think it is to spend time in college? What are employers looking for, trying to break into the IT industry as an older dude?
So you mentioned being laid off, but it sounds like that was not in an IT or computer-related field?
Well, it's kind of a crossover because I've been in the audiovisual industry for close to 20 years.
Okay.
I was a live sound audio engineer, so a lot of the technology is very similar to what I already knew. I'm familiar with all the hardware side of it and some networking as far as audio consoles and networking events. So now I'm just trying to learn the IT technical side of it and branch off in that direction.
Well, I think there's obviously challenges here. When you get up to someone who is older in IT, and it's sort of a problem in any industry, is ageism and people wanting to hire people that are going to be around much longer, and perhaps it's sometimes easier to hire people who are younger and deal with their inability or lack of knowledge of the world. Some people like to take advantage of that. Other organizations, though, can appreciate someone who is a little more mature and who shows up on time and understands the needs of an organization and can be a little more adult about those things. You just have to find the right place to do this. Now, you've got also a little bit of an advantage. First, let's go back to your question, which talked about going back to college and getting computer science. Computer science is a completely different world than IT. And you really need to separate these out. In most environments, and in fact, in most schools, most universities and colleges, I have recently looked around at many different colleges. My kids are at that college age. I've got 2 in college and 1 that will be going shortly. And so we're looking at different schools. And I, of course, want to find a school that will give them practical knowledge of what they need to go out and do something in IT. So I want to find a school that has an emphasis in cloud technologies, that understands the importance of virtualization and rolling out large-scale virtualization, that understands networking and creating redundant networks, of overlaying the security across all of this, that understands next-generation security requirements. Those are things that people need right now in information technology. And surprisingly, schools don't even come close. Most formal 4-year universities have no practical representation of any of those things, oddly enough. I just looked at one, in fact, that talked about all of the calculus you would need to take to get information technology types of roles. But we don't do calculus in information technology. Yeah. We don't come close to doing calculus in information technology. Why would I take calculus? That's the dumbest thing ever. But this is the idea that colleges have a different perspective of what you should know versus what employers would like you to know. There are some universities, though, that get it. And these are usually places that are not the common 4-year degree. You know, the chat room even mentioned places like WGU, which are universities that focus on these technologies. There are other more regional or companies. There are more regional places. There's some very good ones in Central Florida. There's these little nuggets, these little highlights of places. Now, when you talk about computer science tends to be the development of those technologies. It tends to be the programming of those technologies. It tends to be someone who's designing the next series of Ethernet chips. It's somebody who's creating their own applications, which is an absolutely interesting part of technology, but it has a very separate view of what traditional IT happens to be. Now, there is a little bit of a focus these days in companies that are trying to blend together the programming, the development with the operations, the DevOps type work. It's not going to work, but they're going to try that. I think good for them. I like where they're going with it. I understand what they're trying to do, but the type of person who is a programmer is very different than the type of person that is doing IT management, IT operations. It just is.
Yeah, I see.
And it needs to be because it's a very different science. Go ahead, Vernon.
I was going to say, yeah. It sounds like the direction I'm highly interested in is going into IT securities, and I know there's almost a void for enough people who can do that job in the industry.
There absolutely is.
But I don't know if I should go the college route or if I should go the certifications route.
There's a need for
kind of the crossroads I'm at.
It's different things there. So it's not like one replaces the other. The certifications don't replace a 4-year degree. 4-year degrees don't replace certifications. And neither of them replace experience. And experience doesn't replace any of those others. So there's a different level of emphasis on those three things depending on the employer that you talk to. One of the things you do have an advantage in your particular part of life right now is you have connections. You know people that are in your old industry. Where you happen to live are larger companies that make or distribute products that are things that you're familiar with. A good example, a lot of people come to me and say, I was working as a nurse, I was working in medicine, now I want to go into IT. And I said, that's great, because hospitals would love to have somebody medically knowledgeable work in their IT department. Someone who works with audio, somebody who does audio technology. I know the people I bought my audio equipment from, it's a Linux box. It's a fully self-contained Linux machine that happens to have a piece of hardware on the front that's my mixer that runs this. The Linux box is in my rack. Nice. I don't see any of the Linux, but you have to know the technology to be able to use this. But there's all that audio overhead associated with it. You have people talking about VU meters and trying to understand how to get a phone patch into this thing. And traditional people dealing with Ethernet have no idea what you're talking about. Audio people are like, oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, we need to do some echo cancellation here, and we need to put some EQ on this. Right. That's the part where you can use what you know to be able to roll it into a position with IT that has some association with that. Now, it may not be that direct for what you're doing. You may not be able to find that. You may go into a different vertical, a different type of industry completely, but there's an advantage there that you might be able to take advantage of knowing who you know in these different organizations.
Right.
Only you're really going to be able to figure out, is this something where I'm going to need a degree? And you may be able to use your past experience in having a job and a family and a formal role somewhere else and use that as your practical experience that takes the place of any formal degree. The challenge for you is moving from one industry to another. Doing the AV and now moving more into IT makes a little more of a challenge. You may have to find the people who know you and can trust that you're the one who's going to be smart enough to learn as they go and get you on board and get you that underground experience to be able to start making that happen.
Right. Great. Well, that's some great advice. You gave me some things to think about, and your knowledge is invaluable, and I really appreciate it.
Good luck, Vernon.
Side note, are you familiar with with Dante Audio Networking?
I am not. Should I be?
Yes, you should check it out. Look up it's like AudioNet or AudioNate. It's Dante is the protocol. Dante Audio Networking. It's pretty fascinating stuff to integrate your audio networking. Yeah, just check it out.
I'm on the website. I'm gonna check it out when this is over.
Right on.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, take care. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the call. That's great. It's a challenge for everybody, really. Even if you're moving from IT job to IT job, I started off at help desk. I moved into, I'm talking very broadly here, moved to workstation management, like the operating system, like Windows, managing a Windows workstation across a very large company. Then moved to server management. That was fun, to manage servers. To manage, from there, went to networking. And you see how these layer on top of each other. And so when I went into networking, did tons of great networking and packets, and then went into security. And that's kind of where went from security to now doing this. So each one of those built on each other, and I was able to use the knowledge I had all the way up and down that stack. So once I got into security, I knew about Windows. I knew how Windows handled security. I knew how Windows handled things across the network. I understood how to manage this. So each one of those things, I didn't plan to get into security when I started in the help desk. I had no idea it was a job. Kind of wasn't a job. But kind of got me there to where I was, and being able to work through those different pieces. That's where I kind of focused my efforts. And really, I think it was the networking piece. I mentioned this earlier, networking as a foundation. That's really what allowed me to branch out into whatever I wanted to do. Because once you know networking, you understand how everything talks to everything else. And now you can start applying that. You're sort of starting at the bottom foundation of what everybody's doing. And now you can figure out the database piece. Now you can figure out the server operating system. Now you can look at the very specialized internal Linux-based mixer that's on my desk. I understand the networking piece of it. Those are things that are so hard to get through. People will come in. I had people come in and set up a security system with cameras, and they just plugged them all into my network and said, I don't know how all this plugs in. We just kind of plug it in and it all works. I'm like, yeah, but you're killing me because it's multicast. It's killing all my other equipment. I'm going to stick this on a different VLAN. Oh, we don't know about that. We don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, VLAN. So having that knowledge becomes very valuable when you start building your own home lab, when you start going into another part of technology, becomes really useful. And security is huge right now. Having worked in next generation firewall company for almost 7 years before doing this full time, we couldn't get enough people. We could not find enough people to hire. My customers could not find enough security people to hire. And it's only getting much broader. Security is now touching everything. There's security jobs that deal with just firewall. There's security jobs that deal with just logs. There's security jobs, big data. That is what now amazing. Things that we didn't have even exist for us to work with. We had a concept of what we could do someday if we could only store this amount of data. We had a concept of how we would search through that, but we were never able to do it. Now we can. That's a whole new set of jobs in IT, and we're finding new ways to work through those, to find things we were never even aware of before, because now we're able to correlate these amazingly humongous large data sets. It's remarkable. Who would have thunk? It was just not around when I started this. I can't imagine what things are going to be in 10 years. That's remarkable for those. All right. Well, we've gone through 2 hours. Well, one more call. One more. Because I'm handling it okay. We'll go to 347 either. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Ricardo. I'm calling from New York.
Hello, Ricardo. Welcome. What can we do for you?
Actually, I was just listening to the last caller, and I kind of fall into that situation. But I did everything that I was supposed to do. I started off as a help desk. I actually started off working my way into the banking industry. I did money transfer, and I've always been interested in computers.
Okay.
I did everything at home, and basically I just kind of got my foot in the door doing, partial in the same in the same job doing part-time IT, and then did my money transfer until I finally started getting into more of the help desk role. And then I did find another job where I was given the opportunity to do help desk on a full-time level.
Okay.
And I lasted in that same company for about 10 years, and then I ended up becoming a network administrator.
Great.
I went to school I went to DeVry, and I got my 2-year degree, and from there, that's when I was promoted as a network administrator. So now I'm right now. It's been 2 years since I've been in this role. I just want to see where else. I just want to further my career. I'm actually hitting close to 50. I'm 40, 46, 47 actually on Thursday. But I just want to make it. I guess I want to expand more on the network administrator. I know that I have maybe another jump to another job. My wife, we're in New York, and it's just kind of tough to make ends meet, having 2 kids, and it's just, I just want to expand and just get to the next level, or I don't know where to go from there. I'm learning everything as far as from network administrator. It's still a challenge because I've been doing more of the help desk role for a long time. It's just I'm very new to it. I just don't want to start looking for jobs on the network administrator and then shoot myself in the foot and finding out that I'm not quite there yet. Even though I'm technically in my current position, I'm a network administrator.
Well, you're in a great geography. You're in a great part of the world for this kind of thing because you've got a lot of options. Have you been able to take advantage of any of the local user groups? Because in that particular area, tons of Microsoft, Cisco, even at that point, you've got even more specialized user groups that you might be able to attend. Are you a member, or have you attended any of those?
No, I haven't. I'm actually maybe through LinkedIn, but those are just smaller groups. But I don't know where to go because, again, it's just something that I just want to expand my network admin, just become more refined. I do want to take it to the next level. I've been looking at certain certifications. I've been looking at VMware virtualization.
Good.
It's just so much that's out there. I don't know what should I be learning about.
It's one of those things where you almost have to make a move to another organization to be able to grow and move up in particular areas. And it may be that you're able to and that's why I mentioned the user groups, because that's where you meet people in your area that are either going to know someone who is looking for someone to fill a role, or they in their own organization are going to do that. I have often mentioned on other user groups that in the industry, I have probably had, 10, 12 jobs, 15 jobs through the years with different companies. Some of them were where I moved within the same organization. Some of them I moved to a different organization. My first job in technology was one where I was kind of a glorified delivery person. I would also do some installation of hardware. That was the only job I got in IT where I didn't know somebody. Every job after that, I knew somebody at that organization. I knew somebody who already worked there. They may not have even necessarily been in the department that was hiring, but the fact that I knew somebody there was enough that there was a connection. And those are the connections that we rely on. So every other job after that I ever got in IT was somebody I already knew. Those are powerful networks, people networks. And if you aren't taking advantage of that, and this is more than just LinkedIn, this is meeting someone, sitting down with them, At these meetings, you always have a chance. They bring in pizza. You're able to sit down and eat with people. And we sometimes mention this because I do have a sales engineer background as well. Sitting down and eating a meal with someone is very different than communicating with somebody over LinkedIn. There's something human, that there's a connection between people when you do that, where you're not just talking shop, you're also talking about home, you're also talking about things you like. You get to know someone so much better. And those are opportunities you should try to take advantage of, is having a slice of pizza at a user group meeting. Do you guys come here a lot? Are you part of the group? How long have you been a part of the group? Are there other groups you're part of? Are there a lot of people here from your organization? What do you do at your organization? Those are questions that people more than happy to talk about at these meetings. And Ricardo, you should absolutely take advantage of those if they're available in your area.
Where can I find those type of groups, like meetups or something like that? Or,
I find a lot of them are posted on meetup.com.
Because I do want to take it.
But there's you could probably also find them if you just Google Microsoft user group. There's going to be a bunch that will show up in your particular area. Cisco user group, and probably VMware as well. If you were somebody who wanted to get into a very specific niche, even Palo Alto Networks firewalls, they have user groups now where you can go into a particular area. So it's a very niche-y one. Microsoft and Cisco tend to be well attended, and they tend to be in many, many different geographies. That would be a good place to start.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I've been looking for something like that. I mean, as a hobby, I do also DJing, and I understand the whole situation as far as for music, sound. So from the last caller, I was just like, wow, let me just call in, because I'm falling into that category. But at least I already have my foot in the door, but I just want to make it. I need a couple more years out of this and make the most out of my network administrator. I mean, I really like the whole idea of the firewalls, because at work, we're a small group, and we do a lot of help desk. It's basically a jack of all trades.
I recently,
like where I work.
Just to kind of focus on that for a second, because I do come from a kind of a firewall background, this is your chance to also build that home lab out. If you've never downloaded pfSense, you can find a pfSense virtual machine out there on the internet that you can download.
Actually, I do have it.
Okay, well, there's a good example. Those are the types of projects you should be setting up, not just for you, but anybody who's listening. Find those types of projects to install, because then when you walk in the door to talk with somebody about security, and they're going to say, what type of firewall experience do you have? Go, oh, I built a pfSense box. I installed the IPS. I modified my IPS signatures. I made sure I did these reports and generated reports on it. Those are the types of things people are looking for. And don't just stop there. Find the other security products to be able to load up and work with, so that when you're ready to move up to that next level, you're all ready to go. You're not somebody who now has to learn that piece walking in the door. Will there be an upward slant? Yeah. There's nobody knows everything about everything in IT. Nobody knows everything about everything in the job they happen to be in. Some of us, we know that it's a weird world we live in. We always don't know the answer. It's rarely that we know the answer. We now have to go figure out the answer. That happens all the time. I was a senior engineer at a next generation firewall company working with technologies nobody even used before. Of course, I didn't know the answer to these questions. Let me go find out. And that's what you should be doing too.
That's actually what I've been doing. I was just more hesitant about putting anything regarding stuff that I did at home, especially with the pfSense. Yeah. Because I wasn't sure if I should just mention that. So
always mention those things. Always talk about those projects. Don't stop with that. Install some addition intrusion prevention. Do as much Nmap as you can. Understand how to do these things at a command line, how to install it on a Linux machine, figure out Those are the types of things in an interview people are looking for. They wish more people would have these things set up and have knowledge of that. They just haven't run into the people that will. If you've done it, absolutely talk about it. So that's my recommendation for you.
Oh, that's great. So I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Ricardo. Best of
your
luck.
show is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. That's one of the things that in interviews, we often don't know what to talk about as technology people. As a hiring manager, I've done many interviews and I have a list of things. One of the first things I've mentioned in a previous study group is tell me everything you know about ARP. That's a good icebreaker right there. Right off the top, tell me everything you know about ARP. How about reverse ARP? How about proxy ARP? We go down the list and I get a feel when somebody starts talking about these things, they've done this before. Or they've set this up before, or they've ran into a problem before, or they captured packets about this before. Tell me about those things. So you can go down that line of figuring out those pieces and getting them going. That would be pretty strong to be able to talk to somebody at that level and be ready when you walk in the door. You may have never worked with any of their equipment before. You may know nothing about Cisco firewalls, but you know everything about pfSense. And you can talk about that. I got to tell you, if somebody knows pfSense, they're going to be fine working on a Cisco firewall. They can learn those things because the concepts are the same. Being able to set up an IPsec tunnel between two pfSense firewalls, the concept's the same, whether you're setting up an IPsec tunnel between Cisco, setting up between two Palo Alto Networks devices, because IPsec is IPsec is IPsec. Those are the things that do come in handy. You do need to know those things. Well, I learned a lot today. I'm going to spend a lot of time with LabGo for now. So I have to go and play around with this stuff that you've given me. Thank you so much for joining us on this study group. Thank you for attending the first hour. Thank you for being here in the after show and calling in and your questions in the chat room. Welcome to 2018. It's going to be a great year. We will see you next month on February the 14th for the next study group for Network Plus. If you want Security Plus, come back next week. We'll do the Security Plus one. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.